I need to practice video communication for a lot of reasons, and a good one is climate change, because I love this stuff. And I'm in my backyard in my gazebo, and it's gorgeous outside. Well, I'm west of Phoenix by 30 or so miles up in the Estrella foothills, and so I'm just loving life right now, and loving talking about science. I'm one of those. I was a mentally gifted minor, and I just love science. I love math. Can't help it. And then I invested my treasure into climate change in 1972. I was a senior at UC Irvine, and greenhouse gas global cooling was the fear. I drank that Kool-Aid. And so in 1972, I built a car that met 1986 air pollution requirements because they said it couldn't be done. I learned a lot. I did it, but I learned a lot. And then by 1976, it's front page of the New York Times. But by 1975, I'm sorry, it was New York Times, 76, oops, it started warming. And there was a pretty good warming period from 75 to 98. And so there's a lot of woo that happened right there. And then it went flat, still flat. And so if the science is settled, should I tell you where that number comes from? Oh my God, it's just nobody cares. Why don't they ever research it? 97% of scientists agree. Oh, that's just foolish. No scientist would ever say that. It turns out that a climate change analysis man from Queensland, Australia, reviewed 12,000 articles, published articles in 2014, and 33% of them said man-caused. And so then he actually surveyed those 33%, and 97% of those 33% said it's man-caused global warming. So ever since then, we've used the number of 97%. At the same time, the founder of the Weather Channel ran a real survey amongst meteorologists, and 15% said it was man-caused. So we've carried this fake science because it's profitable. It's a $6, $8, $12 billion industry, to the point where now, if the science is settled, if it is man-caused CO2 that is creating warming, and 2014 was the warmest year of the year, warmest year ever. 2015 they said it was the warmest year ever, and then the Met in England, the keeper of all the statistics, said, you can't cook the books that much. So we have to use 2014, that's okay. If 2014 was the warmest year on record, man-caused CO2, then it's not the United States, because our CO2 levels are below where they were in 1998. Oops. So it's not our fault. If the science is settled, it's not us. Everybody just shut down all that stuff. Don't worry about it. It's not us. Go ahead. So it wasn't man-caused when it was cooling, and I first paid attention. It's not man-caused now. CO2 is a lagging indicator of warming. Okay, let me explain this to you. There's an old video, it's a decade old, that's still out there, and it's the internet, you'll find it. When the sun belches, the oceans warm, and they exhale greenhouse gas. The troposphere is 12 miles thick at the equator, 0 to 4 miles thick at the poles. The sun belches, and during the summer, there's 4 miles of troposphere at the poles. During the winter, the oceans cool, inhale, not a scientific term, huh? Inhale greenhouse gas, and the troposphere is indistinguishable. So the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is based upon how warm the oceans got, which is based upon the sun's energy. Now, I got kickback on that, but people, the ocean can't breathe, it can't do it. Well, they obviously, anyone that has, if you haven't been to San Francisco during the summer, you may not have experienced it, but in San Francisco during the summer, the Inland Empire heats up, the fog comes in, cools down the Inland Empire, the fog goes back out. All summer long, that's what's going on. And so it's just a grander scale on how our planet works. Well, that was okay until I started studying what's going on now and what might be happening. we know it didn't happen, is a grand solar minimum. And I really started paying attention when the hurricanes started kicking around, because that was different. We were promised hurricanes back in 1998, and they didn't show up until 2017. Something changed. And so then when the hurricane hit all the way around to Ireland, oh, something's happening. And so grand solar minimum is a 400-year sun cycle, and it's amazing because every 400 years, all the planets line up on the same side of the sun. I didn't know that. That stretches the Earth's orbit elliptical. I didn't know that. And then the angle of the sun, the angle of the Earth as it rotates fluctuates by, I think, 23 degrees. And so as the rotation intensifies, it looks like it might be North America gets just hammered by being farther from the sun, and grand solar minimum also means the sun output is at a minimum. And then the southern hemisphere may or may not have the same impact. We got studies, come on, 1600s. We all remember George Washington, the Delaware, it's frozen, icebergs, lots of, come on. The 1600s in Europe, that's the plague, that's the freezing to death. That's where glaciers wiped out entire cities before the people could even move out, because the cooling cycle is fast. The cooling cycle between the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age was a decade. And it turns out the 400 years before that was the same thing, and 400 years before that was the same thing. And so this is looking at the fourth year of a 400 cycle where all the planets are lining up. The ellipse is increasing, and what happens we know on the East Coast, what happens in Europe we know, what happens in California we know, because there were the missionaries, right? And they built the, come on, help me out here. Right, all the way up the coast of California, and so we know it was really dry in California. The jet stream shifts dramatically during grand solar minimum and goes way north, blows down through Chicago. Now I'm wondering, does that increase the pressure coming backwards to California? And does California dry out because it's actually the desert winds that are blowing through instead of the trade winds? Don't know. Nobody knows. Haven't figured it out yet. But I started paying attention to that when Harvey parked, because when Harvey parked, we're west of Phoenix. I'm up in the Estrella. They call them the Estrella Mountains, but they're foothills. And so it was miserable. When Harvey was hitting Texas, we were stifled by hot, no air movement, and so was California. And it just kept Harvey beating like that. And now California is just getting hammered by all these winds coming out of the desert. Now, I don't know. Nobody knows. But when they happen fast. And one of the reasons is in the second year, maybe third year, there's always a supervolcano. Has been 3 times out of 3. And right now we have 3 supervolcanoes cooking. Yosemite's the one that's fun for us. And it's partly because of the crust is getting stretched by all of these planets out here. And so it gets the plates moving along, so there's an increased number of earthquakes, there's increased tidal waves, there's increased, all of that's coming along, and then a supervolcano pops loose and then puts us into the Ice Age. And so the numbers right now are 2019 is that winter is when we'll really start paying attention to it. So this is 2017, this is October 2017, so what you can pay attention for, if you like science, is to see if any of those patterns are developing, and if they continue. Is this winter going to be really monstrously horrible from Chicago down, East Coast, Europe, and then what does that do down to in the Sahara? It looks like it compresses the atmosphere in Sahara and kicks the tornadoes across, so we can watch for that. It looks like it blows everything, the desert goes across California, so we'll have to watch that. So climate change, for people who love science, for people that spend a lot of hours every day where the body gives up but the brain still wants food, climate change is a wonderful thing to talk about. So let's have that conversation anytime. Thanks.